Hey everyone, Paul Warburg coming in again from Utah. If you don't know me, I'm the creator behind the Icarus Project YouTube channel. And we have an important topic to discuss today, which is Ukraine peace terms. If you watched the news for the past couple of days, you probably saw that Vladimir Putin once again put out peace terms to Ukraine by which they could end the war. And Ukraine, once again, has rejected Russia's peace terms. The question is, why is that? If Ukraine really wants to end the war, why do they keep saying no to opportunities to end the war? Well, let's start by looking at the peace terms themselves, and you'll get a picture of why. In this case, Putin's demands were quite bold. Putin asked that he be ceded control of more Ukrainian territory than Russian soldiers have currently managed to occupy. So it wants Ukraine to give up land that they have successfully defended in exchange for peace. But more than that, Putin asked for the denazification and the demilitarization of Ukraine. Now, as far as denazification, Ukraine doesn't really have an ability to say yes to that peace term because nobody really knows what Putin is talking about. And as far as demilitarization, that is a non-starter because Ukraine understands more than most nations that if they agree to demilitarization, that is not the end of the war. That is an intermission to give Russia time to prepare to come in and wipe out even more of the country. Now, how does Ukraine know that? And how do we know that? Isn't that just speculation? Well, no, absolutely not. It is a very, very educated guess that leans closer to a certainty. And to understand why, you actually just need to go back to the beginning of the Russo-Ukrainian War, which did not start in 2022, as most people think. That was just when Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine started. But this war that Ukraine has been fighting against Russia actually started 8 years before that, and almost 10 years ago now, in 2014, when Russia invaded and captured Crimea, and then spun out from there to start a Russian-backed separatist movement in eastern Ukraine, in the regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. Now, there's a lot of details there that I won't discuss today. It would just take too long, but I've covered those in my video on Avdiivka over on the Icarus Project. But the main thing to note is that over that 10-year period where Ukraine engaged in battles with Russian forces, Ukraine actually did agree to peace with Russia and Russian-backed groups several times. There were a number of different ceasefires and peace agreements, and Russia never once held their end of the bargain on any of them. If they had, we wouldn't be in this conflict today. It turns out every time that the Russians asked for peace, it was actually because they had found themselves in a strategically vulnerable position, and in order to recoup a victory, they needed to get a ceasefire implemented to give them time to regroup and reload, and then hit the Ukrainians by surprise again. Or maybe not by surprise because they figured it out after a while, but at least helping Ukraine to lose the initiative on the battlefield. Russia has done this enough times that Ukraine is just not going to ever agree to peace terms with Russia in a war of this scale unless Russia gives them terms that are acceptable to them, where they remove themselves from Ukrainian territory entirely. And there's actually more reasons to that than just the tactical reasons as well. Throughout this war, since Russia has captured certain portions of Ukrainian territory, we have heard a lot of stories, a lot of well-documented stories that are verified with video evidence, a lot of eyewitness testimonies, all the evidence you could ask for, of just savage brutality. We have had mass graves discovered in eastern Ukraine in several places. We have had children stolen from their parents, sometimes taken to Russia, sometimes just being re-educated in Russian schools, which portray Ukraine and all of their history as evil, and Russia basically as good, undermining and turning those children's hearts into hatred towards their parents and their grandparents and their country. And we've also heard stories of people being locked in basements and tortured for months at a time, and all sorts of other things. The list of atrocities goes on and on and on. And aside from literal gas chambers, a lot of these stories are reminiscent of the stories we heard back at the start of World War II, when Germany captured lands and that the world swore they would never let happen again. And yet here we are with video and documentary evidence. And so for all those reasons, Ukraine will not accept peace while Russian soldiers are on Ukrainian territory, because to do so would be to abandon those people who live in those territories to horrible things. And not only would they be abandoning them, but if they were to accept Russia's recent terms, and really every iteration of the terms that Russia has offered, they would be abandoning new Ukrainians to that same fate, because they would be giving Russia many large cities where Ukrainians reside. It's just unacceptable to them. Understandably so. Russia obviously knows this, and so the question is, why does Vladimir Putin keep offering these peace terms? He has to know that Ukraine is never going to accept these terms. So is he just throwing a Hail Mary and hoping that one day it sticks? I don't think so. I think there's something else going on here, and it has nothing to do with Ukraine, but it actually has to do with other Western nations, particularly the United States. Because whenever Vladimir Putin offers Ukraine peace terms, and Ukraine says no, this gives Western media something very powerful. It gives them the opportunity to create headlines that say that Ukraine is rejecting peace. And it helps feed a narrative that is growing, especially in the United States, that Ukraine, even though they're the nation that was attacked, is a nation of warmongers who just wants war, who just wants to keep harming Russians. And it's a very diabolical and dastardly strategy. Now, Russia loves these narratives because these narratives help them more than just about anything else on the battlefield. These narratives help Russia more than more Russian soldiers would help Russia, because they help to nullify, or at least Russia hopes they will help to nullify in the long term, the main thing that is defeating Russia on the battlefield, which is Western weapons that Russia is having a very hard time fighting back against, even though they have barely been supplied to the level that they can. Now, when these narratives go out, they always go out with the same talking points, which are largely, to sum them up, Ukraine can't win, Ukraine is refusing to commit to winning or to peace, and so we shouldn't support them anymore. And that's also always combined with the idea that the West simply cannot afford to support Ukraine. It's expensive, war is expensive, we'd really like to help, but if there's not going to be peace, we really can't afford to keep helping you. But the reality behind all that is that it's just not true. To get Ukraine to win this war, completely to win this war, and to really nullify Russian power for the next 10, 20, 30 years would probably currently cost just a fraction of the annual US defense budget. And if you think about it, the reason the US defense budget exists to a large part is to protect us from Russian power. And so it's not a matter of cost in reality, it's a matter of not wanting Ukraine to actually defeat Russia. And you have to ask yourself why that might be. On the positive side, some theories are that the West doesn't actually want to defeat Russia too catastrophically because they don't want Russia to collapse, because that would create a bigger problem with nuclear missiles all around Russian territory, etc., that would go into the hands of warlords and unstable little tiny nation states. And that is a scary situation. But on the negative side, there are other theories that you have to wonder if there is some truth behind them to some level, where people don't want the US to invest in the war in Ukraine because if it defeats Russia, it removes the reason for a lot of our defense budget to exist. And there are a lot of people who are incentivized financially to the tune of billions of dollars per year to keep that defense budget funded. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not, maybe it's somewhere in the middle. But the point is, don't believe the headlines that just say Ukraine is a warmonger that doesn't want peace. Nothing could be further from the truth. Ukraine has wanted peace for over 10 years. And all that needs to happen for that to occur is for Russia to simply leave Ukrainian territory. That's all for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video.